DarkAce narrative.
It was summer of 2019 when me and a group of friends decided to take a trip to a nearby lake that we usually do every summer. So, we weren't expecting anything scary to actually happen. When we arrived, we put on our swimsuits and decided to go to the middle of the lake where a diving board was. We were doing tricks, laughing and just having a good time. Now, every time we would wait for a person to jump, we would ask, as a joke, to any other people if what trick him or she can do. Normally as a response, some will just laugh. But, there's this one dude who didn't really want it, and took it negatively. He told us to shut up and watch our mouth before we regret it. He was some tall, lonely dude, who didn't really look like he was there with anyone. Anyway, we just minded our business and kept doing tricks. Suddenly, he pointed his finger at me and told me to come near. I was a little scared, but I just decided to ignore him. In the corner of my eye, I could still see him looking at me. We kept jumping still, and soon one of my friends decided to jump off the diving board. Then, this dude literally followed him, jumped into the water right after my friend, landed on his head and tried to literally drown him. We were all freaked out, and my friend knocked him off of his shoulder and climbed back up the diving board. We dived back in, yet swam to another diving board more towards the edge of the lake. As we were swimming back, this dude is throwing up hand signs and saying, "F*** to us. We were so terrified, and one of my friends hinted that we should go home because we don't know what this dude could be up to. Anyway, now, this other diving board was a lot higher than the one in the middle, so we could see the entire lake and everyone around it. We were back to normal having fun, when my friend noticed out that man again, talking to a group of people which must have been his friends and pointing at us. We decided to dive off and make a run for the car because we didn't want to get jumped by those group of people. We started the car and drove out the area as fast as possible. On our way home, we called the people who owned the lake and told what happened. We decided to make a stop for gas refill. Halfway through, we noticed a car quickly pulled up near us. And, in that car, was the same crazy dude, the one in the lake who tried to drown my friend. Bravely I said, "What do you want from us?" And he replied,
"To make you regret you came to that lake."
Then all of a sudden, he pulled out a knife from his car. Hurriedly, I pulled the gas pump out right and drove so fast. The man followed us and tried to catch us, but on the way home were lots of turns, so I guess he lost track to us. That was the last time we went there at the lake for the year, and hopefully if we go there next summer he won't be there waiting for us.
This all happened at summer in 2017. It was a warm day. My friend and I decided to take a walk together. We were in a really quiet area, and the only sign of life was this small, old and sketchy farm with some horses and cows. We took a turn into a little side road. There was a lady sitting on a bench. She was wearing a long black coat with a black hat. I could have sworn I saw something shiny in her pocket. We walked past her, and she had a bright red face with white horizontal stripes, and she had black beady eyes and long gray hair. She had a bike standing near her which we assumed was hers.
"You are such pretty girls,"
she said to me and my friend. We were 12 at the time, so this kind of got us off guard. We started walking a little faster to pass her more quickly. After we passed her and slowed down, she jumped up with a weird movement and started following us. She was running and jumping like a cartoon character. I turned around to look at her, and when she saw me looking, she turned sideways and acted like she was taking a picture of some flowers. She kept doing this for a few minutes. My friend and I started walking faster again, and she started running. We ran as fast as we could until we lost her. We were creeped out and decided to walk to another little farm, which we visited pretty often, to pet the animals, and the people knew us, so it made us feel safe. Suddenly, when I was petting one of their horses, the same lady suddenly ran past the gate from the farm and doing that same thing again. I got so scared, I asked my friend if we should start heading home. She agreed. As we were walking home, we had to go underneath the bridge. And, as we were about to go under it, I looked up and saw the same lady again, standing on top of the bridge looking at me. She looked very, very angry. My friend and I started running home, but we swear we could see someone following us in the woods beside us. A few weeks later, we visited the farm again, and I asked one of the people there if they knew the lady. Yes, they said.
Yes, she is a drug addict and has psychic problems.
2 days later there was a murder reported on the news. And you know what? It happened at a lake, besides that empty side road. This story took place when I was 8 years old. My mother and I had moved into a new house. I loved that house until I realized there was something strange. That something was our neighbor. I'll call him Steve. Steve was an older man, probably 62 at the time. He was very socially awkward, so his wife had to do the talking for him when we were around. It wasn't until months later when my mom and I were returning home from dinner at 8:30 p.m. I noticed Steve had ran to his window to watch us. He saw the headlights of my mom's car pull up to our house. He swung open his front door and pretended to take out the trash. Although trash night had already passed, he said,
Hello.
in the most spine-chilling voice, and stood there watching my mom and I as we frantically tried to open our front door. We noticed him walking up behind us. The next night, my mom and I went to the mall. It was roughly 8 p.m. I felt as though we were being followed, so I whipped my head around, and there he was. Steve was following us. He jumped behind a rack of clothes to hide himself. Not long after my mom and I drove home, and there was Steve pulling into his driveway at the same exact time. I couldn't call the police as there was no solid evidence until one day I had enough. I was in my basement by the big sliding glass door, and Steve had come around my backyard and just stood there staring at me. I yelled at him and locked my door. When I peeked out of the curtain, he was right up against the glass. I felt like I couldn't live comfortably in my own house, so shortly after, we moved again, and now we are safe.
This is a true story. My name is George, and I was about 12 years old, and I had a great life in Australia. One day, I was at a park, and there was a huge storm water drain beside it, one of the ones shaped like a flat-bottomed V. I was on the swings, which were facing the drain, and I suddenly got a weird feeling of being watched. I walked to the edge, and halfway down the slope was a man. He had blood on his side, and he looked genuinely hurt, so I made my way down the concrete slope. He was in his 50s, bald. When I was near him, I called out, "Are you all right?" He didn't reply. I thought he must be in such pain that he couldn't speak. I got out my phone to call 000, but all of a sudden something flashed, and he moved towards me with astonishing speed. He was holding a knife. I screamed and tried to run, but I slipped and fell, landing in the trickle of water at the bottom. He advanced on me, and he raised the knife. The next moment was the most painful of my life. He brought the knife down on my bottom left stomach, around the area opposite to my kidney. I could almost feel death on my shoulders. He was screaming and laughing. The strange thing was that he didn't sound crazy, he just sounded like I had told the funniest joke in the world. His wholesome laughing and blinding pain made me black out. I don't know how. But I lived. I think the number must have dialed, and the police must have heard screaming, but I don't know. Somehow I survived. I can never know how, but I can be grateful. Anyway, I woke up in the hospital, and the police interviewed me. I told them about the man, and they started a search. They eventually found him, and he got 10 years in prison. I have moved away now, and I really hope I never see him again.
My mom, my brother and I used to visit her old house, where she grew up quite often. I really liked going there. We had lots of fun with my cousin and auntie, ate a lot of snacks, played piano and watched cartoons. But there was only one problem. I could not sleep alone, because at that time I was a little kid. So, I was afraid. Sometimes, I had to ask my cousin to sleep with me. Unfortunately, there was this one time when everyone fell asleep except me and my grandparents. We went upstairs, and I slept in the room next to theirs. Things were going okay, but I was kind of scared, so I stayed up late playing with my phone. I was really sleepy, but I had to stay awake. Then, when I could not keep my eyes open anymore, I slept. I woke up, I guess some hours later. I was feeling very nervous, as if something bad would happen, and there I heard some sounds. Someone was blowing air. It was really weird. At first I thought it was my grandma or grandpa, because we have very big balcony there, and they could go outside. But I could feel they were in the next room of mine. Then, this someone or something started clapping, and I felt it was walking around, because I heard the sound approaching me, and then going back. Windows were open, and the bed where I was in was right in front of the window. I called on my courage to get up, and ran to my grandparents' room. I told them my story, but they thought I just had a dream. Actually, everyone thought it was a dream. But I know, I was awake. I still cannot figure out what happened.
This story took place my freshman year of high school. I was put in a class with my now known crazy ex-boyfriend. We'll call him Ben. It all started when Ben asked me to homecoming, and I politely declined his offer. I ended up going with another guy who asked me. During the whole entire night of the homecoming event, Ben was staring at me from across the room with rage in his eyes. I noticed he was following me around. When I went to get food, he even came up to my date and threw lemonade on his shirt. I was so mad, and I yelled at him. Fast forward 4 months later to Valentine's Day. Ben still likes me and told me he got me a gift. He bought me a gift card from my favorite makeup store, which I never told him about. I felt obligated to give him a chance. So, I tried talking to him for a month, but he was so smothering that I couldn't do it anymore. I told him nicely we could be friends, but that's it. However, a no wasn't in Ben's vocabulary. He kept texting me every day begging for a chance until I blocked him. He literally ran down the hallway at school after me and slammed his fist down on my desk asking why I blocked him. Summer had come along, and I didn't speak to him for 3 months. The next year, I was 15, and Ben was in my class. It seemed like he had changed. So, I decided to get into a relationship with him. I know, I am so stupid. And I regret it, for this was the start of the worst year of my life. There's this time when he texted me and asking where I was. I told him I was at the mall and he said,
I just ran past your house and saw you weren't home. Why didn't you tell me?
I was scared, so I apologized. Eventually, I broke up with him, and I thought it was over. Until he started slowly driving past my house almost every day, One time, my current boyfriend and I got a follow request from a fake account. We knew it was Ben. He threatened us too. So, I decided to tell it to the police and they talked to him at school. Anyway, Ben has a girlfriend now, so hopefully that'll be enough to keep him away.
I know this isn't maybe to the tier of some other stories here, but it still scared me nonetheless. I was 13 to 14 when this happened. We just had an event at school, meaning we had a half day. Even though I was all dressed up, nice dress and shoes, and it was raining, I wanted to walk back home through the park that was in between where I lived and my school. I wanted to walk home since my parents were kind of the helicopter type, and I figured they didn't know when my half day ended, so they couldn't track me. I put on my raincoat and started walking towards the park. A couple blocks away from the entrance I stopped at a red light, where a middle to old-aged man was in jogging attire and a light raincoat. Now I live in the city, and one thing about the city is that you almost never small talk with strangers, ever. But he was on the older side, so I didn't think it was weird when he started talking to me. Sometimes older people like to talk. It started out as small talk, the rain, etc. But as we both started crossing the street, it started to slowly get stranger.
What a pretty dress. Are you going to some sort of party?
I told him I was going to a friend's house, lie, and that I'd just been to an event.
Well, that dress really makes you look so mature.
I didn't comment, because what could I say? It wasn't even a dress that was meant to somehow be for someone older. It was just a fancy dress. He started talking more, still walking right next to me, saying he had to get his jog in before the rain started, and how he liked to run in the park. That would have been all good and dandy, but just a minute after he said that we walked past where he needed to turn to go into an entrance. This made no sense, and he would have to walk a full extra 8 blocks to enter into the park. Like I said, I'm in the city, meaning there's always people around. However, there were less people out and about since it was a bit before midday, so people would be at work, and we were in a residential area and it had started to rain. He continued talking.
Where are you going? I could always walk you there.
I'm good, thank you. Also, I think you just missed your turn into the park. He made a bit of a sour facial expression before almost immediately becoming all cheery again.
Oh, it's fine. I can always go on a run somewhere different, especially if I get to talk with such a pretty young girl.
He stepped a bit closer to me, to the point that if a stranger saw us, they'd assume we were family or something along those lines. That was the final straw. I immediately said, "This is my stop," before turning into a random fancy building and telling the doorman that a man outside had been acting weird and sort of following me. He told me I could wait inside by the lobby. Apparently the man didn't leave until 5 minutes later, when the doorman asked who he waiting for, and he said his daughter. The doorman then threatened to call 911 after some back and forth, which made the man eventually leave. I ended up calling an older friend who had a car to pick me up. This may have just been me being freaked out, but I could have sworn I saw the man waiting across the street in a cafe.
I'm 25 now, but this story happened when I was 16. I was camping with my dad and my twin sister at Cross Lake, Alberta. We will name my sister Mary. Mary and I are not identical. She's taller, blonde, has dark blue eyes and tan skin. I'm shorter with icy green eyes, fit, and not as tanned. It was midnight when Mary and I went looking for an outhouse to use before going to bed. We were walking down a path with a lantern when we saw another light heading towards us. We walked past a really cute guy in his late 20s giving us a smirk. We chuckled as we continued down the path when Mary decided to take one more look. Once she looked back, she seen him standing still with the same smirk that is now more sinister. She froze in her steps, pulling my arm to get me to stop with her. The stare down between us three was so intense that I just wanted to go back to our campsite just so I can pee in the trees. What happened next made my heart stop. The strange man slowly started to walk our way. He then turned off his lantern so we couldn't see him. This made Mary and I run as if we were in the 100-meter race. We can hear the man's footsteps getting closer as he was letting out a crazy laugh. The path we were on split off in two different directions. Mary turned right with the lantern, and I turned left with nothing but fear. The path ended up taking me near the beach of the lake. I kept running until I seen an outdoor change room where I ended up hiding. It didn't have doors, but I could see through the holes through the wooden walls by using the light from the moon. I sat there in silence for what felt like forever, and was convinced that he must have stopped chasing me a while ago. I took one more glance through the hole in the wall when I heard a man's voice behind me say,
"Don't be scared of me, Tilly. I just want to keep your eyes."
I screamed, then tried to run out of the change room, but he caught me and threw me onto the floor. I was doing the best I can to fight him off. I was kicking, scratching and crying when I unexpectedly had dirt in my mouth. The man was trying to muffle my cries by shoving dirt in my mouth. He then proceeded to rip my sweater off and trying to sexually assault me. He was then suddenly tackled off me, then began to gasp for air from being choked. I didn't know who was fighting off my attacker, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. I ran out of the change room and seen a few flashlights heading in my direction. I came to a halt when I seen Mary running out of the group and towards me. Mary and I kept our distance while we seen a mob of people screaming, attempting to peel my hero off my attacker. Through all the moving lights I managed to see that my hero ended up being my father. I can't tell you the rage my dad had on his face. His determination to kill my attacker was so strong the small group of people struggled to stop them from fighting. Finally, the camp security came and detained my attacker until the police arrived. 3 days later, my dad sits me down and tells me the information he got from the officers. It turns out my attacker confessed to stalking me for 2 months, and he wouldn't stop talking about my eyes. He has been known to stalk teen girls, and there has been some reports of him being a peeping Tom. I've never seen or heard anything else about this person, and I hope it stays that way forever.
My definition of a good hotel is a place where I could be comfortable to stay at. It's a code I've been holding up until I experience something out of the ordinary. An experience that I really don't want to happen again. Anyway, it started when everything changed. People need to be quarantined due to a pandemic going on around the world, and due to this, our normal means of transportation has been quite difficult. Fortunately, we were given the opportunity to stay at a nearby place for us to be able to get to work easily. In that way, we can sustain our needs due to this national emergency. I got the reception and she giving me a key. It is basically a small room in an apartment. It consists of one window and a door that leads to a small bathroom. It's decent, nothing much, but it will definitely help me since I currently live 40 minutes away from my job. The first day I arrived, it was very comfortable and pretty normal, but I have to make sure that the place where I would stay was clean, because I'm the type of person who really hated dirty surroundings. So I decided to clean the place up myself without the help of the housekeeping. I mopped the floor, fixed the bed, and wiped the window until I noticed that there was this tiny black paper. By the looks of it, it looked like it was attached to the wall long enough to have cobwebs all over it. I took it off from the wall and spent the day cleaning the whole room, not knowing that this will be the last normal day of my entire stay in the apartment. The following day, I had this nightmare. Everything in my dreams was all pitch black and I couldn't really see anything, only but pure darkness. But as I turned around, I saw a silhouette of a man sitting on a chair, singing something that sounded like a cradle song. I just stared at him and noticed that he wanted to get up, but his feet were tied up to the chair. I woke up normally, although the scene still lingers at the back of my mind. But since I don't really believe paranormal things, I decided to shake it off and thought that it was probably just a normal nightmare, and so I proceeded doing my usual routine, like nothing happened, because it would usually occur when I get really exhausted of doing household chores, or if I sleep really late than the usual time where people would sleep, but something was off on that room that night. It felt like someone's watching me. On the third day, I have the same nightmare. Same man, same cradle, same position. But there was something still off about this guy. I leaned forward, eyes squinting together, as I saw that this man was no longer tied from the chair. I got startled that this man started to slowly stand up. This dream was becoming way too realistic. I felt that this man was approaching me. I desperately tried to move but noticed that my whole body was stuck against the bed. I struggled and struggled until I finally gave in. This guy was trying to touch my feet with his hands. I vividly feel it. I was frightened. I couldn't feel anything other than the fact that I could only shut my eyes and try to wake up. Eventually, long after I woke up, it was 3:08 in the morning. I prayed and listened to some songs to forget the terror that still haunts me. But it's getting worse. The song I was playing got switched to an old song. The lights suddenly shut off, and I saw the same man with my two eyes, sitting on my chair by the nearby window, and was about to stand up and come towards me. I was really scared and almost cried. I covered myself with a blanket and prayed until the music went back to the song, the lights turned on. I was really exhausted and barely even breathing because of the terror I experienced and didn't know what to do. Ever since I cleaned the corner of that room, it always felt like someone's watching me and strange things started to happen. I tried to ask the front desk about the history of that room, and she can't even tell me. I told her what I experienced, and I saw the fear in her eyes, but she was trying to change the story and making up certain things in order for me to stop. I still don't know what is the story behind that room, but what's bothering me is that what if I did not remove the black paper that was stuck to the wall? Will I still experience what happened? Or was it really there, waiting for another victim?
I hired drivers for years for a transportation company. I had an applicant I spoke with and asked him to submit an application. His work history was good, driving record good, background clean. He checked out all the way around. I always talked to the applicants a few times and never got a weird vibe of any sort. The time came to have him arrive for his orientation, and as usual, I introduced myself and directed him for orientation. Absolutely Nothing stood out about this driver. He was neat, presentable, and didn't draw attention to himself. He drove for about a year before he quit. Probably 3 to 6 months after he quit, I see in the news that he killed 11 congregation members in a Jewish synagogue. I was absolutely sick to my stomach.